Most men want more clarity, more respect, more control over their lives, but few know how to get it. Welcome to the Bro Coach Podcast with Dennis Procopio, the founder of Man Up Life Coaching and the man behind thousands of transformed lives. Not red pill, not therapy, just the evolved man's blueprint for strength, presence, and purpose. All right, welcome to another episode of the Bro Coach Podcast. I am Andrew Bonds. I'm here with Dennis Procopio, and we're blessed to have a guest this week named Ryan Western. She is with us to kind of bring a different perspective, kind of the female perspective, to several different topics that Dennis will kind of dive into. So why don't you kick us off, Dennis?
All right. Hey, thanks. So this is a season 1, episode 17, our first series. So we're still finding our way around. We've been rolling out the idea of having guests, which is interesting. And so far, we've only heard from male voices. Ryan is here today. She is the sister of a long-term client, my dude who has given me permission to drop his name, my guy Ian Western. He's been with me for years. He very much identifies as a bro. He definitely wanted a bro coach. He used a lot of coaching systems and ultimately decided Dennis was his guy. It was inevitable that I was going to meet his family, and Ryan is not only the first person I've gotten to meet, but I convinced her to come on to the show to give us a female perspective. So, Ryan, thank you and welcome.
Yeah, no, it's a real honor to be here. I know we talked about it last time we got together, Dennis, but I think this conversation is really important.
That's awesome. Okay, so I'm going to dive right in, and I want you guys who are listening to understand why Ryan was interesting for me. So one of the things I learned about Ryan from Ian is she's a very entrepreneurial, business-driven, dare I say, boss babe energy killer out there in the world. And I find a lot of guys who are in relationships with women who have this, who are cut from this same cloth, who have the same skill set. And one of the things that Ryan and I got into a conversation about off screen was, hey, so I'm in a relationship with a woman. In fact, I'm married. I have a wife. I live in LA, and I live in a world where we don't use some of the language that you use, which sounds very, I guess you might use the term heteronormative, very binary, potentially regressive. And I wanted to just put myself on the cross here and let her kind of grill me and poke holes in our culture, our language, and what's going on in our bubble to make sure that, what we were building here wasn't in any conflict with what other people are building out there in their cultural bubbles in the world. So, Ryan, I'm going to just sort of hand you that and say, run with it.
Sure. Let's run it. I learned about Dennis far sooner than I learned about what the name of your coaching company is called, Dennis.
Uh-huh.
I knew that Ian was interested in this style of mentorship and coaching, and I think I've always had a hang up with what has felt like going down one versus the other road in terms of gender, not for lack of inclusion, but more so it feels hard to make progress when we're leaning into one side of what seems like should be a whole, if that makes sense. So over the years, I feel like I've gotten to know you, even though we only met the other week. You're a part of my brother, you're a part of our family. And I went in really not having any expectations. I went in terms of what to get out of it, but I think I went in not knowing, am I about to walk into a conversation with an Andrew Tate, or am I about to walk into a conversation with, with like what, if not that, what is it, right? What organizations are out there that are passionate about these lines being drawn and acknowledging them, and in what looks like to me potentially ways of reinforcing things that actually further barriers of the two sides kind of understanding each other. And it's not at all what that ended up being, our conversation. I think it was a perspective I hadn't considered, and so it was great. I think what I'm excited to talk to you about today is the perspective that you taught me when we last chatted about, and we can loop back to that part of the conversation, but it showed me how actually I walked away from that being like, wow, men and women are actually even more similar than I even thought. And I think there's like barely a thin little string of a line there. So that's kind of summarizing why I'm excited to be here today.
I love that. I'm going to just shoot. Yeah, that's okay. If you're listening to this, you're not hearing what we're seeing, but Ryan is blessed to live in Los Angeles and be able to work in natural light. The downside of that, of course, is that when it's light, it's light. When it's dark, it's dark. So if you're watching this for visual entertainment value, sorry, suck it. Okay, I have a male audience. We can say things like that. Deal with it, bro. No. Okay, so Ryan, I love what you said. I want to go directly to the heart of what you said initially, which is I wasn't sure if I was walking into an Andrew Tate situation. It's comical to me that that guy has become the poster child for what that is. So what is that in your opinion?
That is alpha male culture. Very thin line between that and what a classic modern definition of incel culture is. It's a male dominated, female subservience. I'm out here for myself and my own serving my own interests, and I'll never care, kind of about anything that would begin to jeopardize that. So it's certainly not a positive one.
Right. And I want you to don't be political. The more honest you are, the better we are. And I will just say for the record, I would never want this guy, Andrew Tate, to listen to this and to think, who the fuck is this guy and why is he shitting on me? Like, I don't know him, so I don't know the guy. I mean, if you put enough content out there, I can make inferences, right? I guess I'd have to sit with you to know who you really are. And maybe not everything you're saying is really who you are. There's an interest for me as a coach to work with people like that and challenge some of their ideologies, because there's a direct connection between ideology and identity. Right. Yeah. And that's what we're here to talk about. So it sounds to me like you were concerned that a, biggish, bald guy with a goatee and a backstory of, surviving trials and tribulations of the ghetto and Rikers Island or whatever might just be coming in with some of that MGTOW red pill alpha male energy. And I think you might have been surprised to discover that in our conversation, I was saying things like I was very open about having been a survivor of trauma, which included child predation by male predators. So that actually made me afraid of men and complicated my relationship with maleness and masculinity. That after living in a household with a father who was very abusive, my mother's next relationship, like yours, was a female relationship. And that in the 70s in rural Pennsylvania, I was going to a Catholic school, and instead of talking about my mom and my dad, I was talking about my mom and my Linda. And so these are some of the things that were also part of influencing who I am, you wouldn't know that I grew up as a probably autistic, artsy little queermo. I was just a little weirdo kid. I was anything but masculine. I was absolutely the guy that everybody picked on, whether it was jocks or nerds. I was just in my own, like, weird little sort of Napoleon Dynamite without the cool factor sort of world. So comically, here I am now flying this flag that seems to be saying, man, 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 man. And you're coming and saying, wait, I don't get it. I just had a conversation with a guy who does not in any way seem like I thought what I was walking into. So the thing I want to ask you is, do you believe that the gender construct itself is sort of fictitious or arbitrary?
I actually really do believe it. And I can talk a little bit about where that belief comes from, if that makes sense.
That's why you're here. Yes, let's hear it.
I think I felt it I felt the friction of what I eventually realized was the construct of gender at a really early age. Boys used to be able to go play outside, get dirty, nobody would care. Girls always had to wear a dress on to me, gender was not like, it really wasn't even about like physical parts. It was about the fact that people were telling me I had to do something one way, even though I didn't feel like that was the way I wanted to do it. Or I should do something one way, even though that's not how I would have done something. So, being, quiet or polite, or not, being raucous outside, or, go let the boys play. I'm like, why can't the girl, So, so to me, growing up, it wasn't about, I really actually had a hard time understanding. I was like, wait. I don't understand just because there's a word boy there and there's a word girl that if I want to act a way, I have to get slotted on one side. Like there's a fence and I have to be slotted on one side or the other. Shouldn't it just be about like what we as a person would want to do, human being want to do? So I didn't, when you're that young, you don't know what the word gender construct means or societal pressures. But as I've gotten older and I've thought more about it, I'm like, everything that I know and have felt about gender, especially somebody being married to another woman, the same gender, it to me is like, I know that there's hormonal differences, there's certainly some physiological differences, but the majority of what the definition of gender is constructed by society. And so if we all wiped our brains and flip-flop the definition tomorrow, I think it would really show how malleable the concept of gender is. The impacts of those societal pressures are enormous. And Dennis, actually, when we were speaking the other week, it made me realize because I'm a woman, I've really focused on the impacts of society's definition of woman, be thin, be well-spoken, but not too loud and not too soft, you always society puts a lot of pressure on women to be right in the middle of things, right? Always in the optimal places. And I've thought a lot about what those are, but I haven't really thought too much about what are the society's versions of pressures for men in that. We talked a lot about that in our last conversation. The protector, the earner, the safety place, tall, big, handsome with a nice car, and how when you look in the mirror and you don't see that, you don't see those pressures that society has defined equals good, right? We all watch Disney movies. The dudes are huge, they have that V-cut. The women are, really petite around the waist. When you don't see what society has told you is right for this definition that it's given you, it really affects your feeling of self-worth. So that's where our conversation ended. But anyways, from a very young age, I've always had an issue with girl versus boy. and not like I'm against these concepts. I've just struggled with it myself and the fact that they even exist.
I 100% hear you. Are you familiar with the song When I Was a Boy by Dar Williams?
No.
I would love for you to immediately go listen to it after we get off the call.
Sure.
Careful, it'll make you cry.
Okay. All right. I will prepare myself.
And then listen to everything Dar Williams, because she's one of the artists who was a 90s, 2000s find for me, who gave a voice to some of the struggle that I was having accessing information in the area where boy and girl, man and woman overlap. I think many people struggle with the difference between biological sex and gender identity. Mm-hmm. Like even you, after saying I don't believe in the gender construct, said I married a woman, we're the same gender. And immediately I thought, well, based on our last conversation, it's probably more accurate that you're the same sex. And as far as gender goes, there's where the construct fucks you up, because what even is that? What is that? You know what I mean?
Every day, and I admittedly am not the best at keeping up with them. I try.
Oh, I by the way, please don't think I'm like trying to like be caught ya or whatever.
No, not at all. There is a difference. And I mean, it's important to keep up with, like, we all should do our best to understand like the terms and that are eventually going to make everybody most comfortable in who they are. So
less than that, I'm going to challenge that. I don't think it's about being politically correct. I think the word abracadabra. Do you know that it actually comes from the Aramaic and it has worked its way into the Hebrew, and it literally means I create as I speak. I think that people don't understand the important, and I think that's why it's in all of our, abracadabra, hocus pocus. It's we were conditioned with that pretty early on, because the power of speech is literally the power to create. It's the power to manifest. I tend to be very literary. I'm like Hamilton, like, why does he write all the time, And I mention it because I live with a lawyer, that's who my partner is. She's a lawyer. And so the reason that we sort of haggle or whatever, or sort of argue over terminology, is because language is power, and terminology, is where the construct comes from. So specificity in language is important, not just so you don't step on somebody's feelings, but also I think there's a critical difference between saying, I am macho versus I'm masculine. I think there's a difference between what feminine means, how we define that. What is femininity? And can I have femininity in me? And if I can't, then who are all these artists who use romance languages to anthropomorphize their muse as feminine? Mm-hmm. Like, why is that baked archetypally into our culture? Why do we pull Mary into Christianity so that we have an Isis archetype? Like, what's going on with this division between God and goddess energy, as it were? I'm not trying to get all woo-woo here, but what is that? So, not to just belabor this too much, but the reason I mentioned Dar Williams is because Dar Williams has a song called When I Was a Boy. Mm-hmm. And she talks about being a child and being able to ride topless on her bike and being able to go out and, like sprint faster than her brother or whatever, or catch frogs, or do all the things that young boys do, and how she identified with some tomboy part of herself that then got marginalized as she grew over, and society pushed certain expectations onto her that were associated with gender roles. Thoughts?
Oh yeah, I mean, if we're all ships out at sea, I think so. You know, the society that we live in is largely the wind, right? It's going to steer you and push you one way or another, depending on where the wind's coming from and which way it's blowing. But yeah, and Ian will probably my brother will probably be laughing at this because I did go around without a shirt quite a lot when I was young. I spent most of my weekends catching frogs and yeah, all the things that you were describing.
Go ahead, keep going.
Oh yeah, no, I very much agree with that. I think, and that's why I'm really curious, Dennis, about why you have chosen to have a male client base, why the mission is really helping men find their what masculinity and their sense of belonging as a man in the world is. And I'd be curious how you incorporate the female concept, construct, and view into that. And do you feel like it's been more about defining things or trying to almost undefine them, meaning deconstruct these definitions, these winds that society has been, pushing into all of our sails?
You're funny you should mention sales, because I run the risk of affecting my sales when I tell you my secret sauce, which is actually a bait and switch. Okay, so Man Up Life Coaching is and always was a double entendre. It plays on the self-judgment that men carry, which is that they're being a little bitch. Here's the language of male speak. You're a bitch, you're a fag, you're a loser, you're a fucktard, you're not doing enough, you suck, you suck, you suck, you suck, you're a piece of shit, you suck. That is the thought bubble that is above most guys' heads all day long. It is similar to the imposter syndrome that I see a lot of women struggle with, but it's less about being liked and accepted as a part of the community, and it's more about being, pass or fail, respected for your achievements or regarded as, quote, beta, which I don't even buy in all that shit. Just right off the top, I don't buy in all that shit. Like, a comedian said it once. He's like, oh, these guys going, I'm alpha. I'm alpha. They're like, no, you're not alpha. Joe Rogan is your alpha. You're all sitting around going like little birds going, feed me, Joe Rogan, feed me. Ow, ow, ow. And he's just throwing up in your mouth because I'm your fucking alpha. He's like, you don't have a society of alphas. You have one. That's what makes it the alpha. So I don't buy into the literal idea of alphas. I do, however, buy into the idea of healthy, strong, masculine identity, because families are where people come from. And I do believe in the family construct. The reason that becomes complicated is because historically, there is an argument that the patriarchy has designed the family structure to favor the biological male and to render the biological female as a wingman person, you prop up your husband. Behind every powerful man, there's a strong woman, etc. That you're this accessory. Even in the Bible, you're told that the wife's job is to support her husband, and his job.
We're made from a rib.
You're made from a rib, dude. You're made from a rib, and we'd still be in Eden if you didn't have this insatiable curiosity. Right. I don't subscribe to that mentality. I do not subscribe to that ideology. A direct answer to your question is both. Am I trying to reinforce these constructs or deconstruct them? I'm trying to redefine them. So it's both and neither. We're insane if we say we don't notice sex differences. We're insane if we don't say that we notice. We're insane if we say that we don't observe. It's like saying I don't see color. Of course you see color. It's not a question of whether you see a color. It's a question of what that means for you. Do you see sex difference? Sex, not gender.
Right.
Very
minimally. I mean, there's body parts and there's hormones and hormonal amounts, and hormonal amounts will influence behavior, influence the way that you naturally feel when you wake up. So those certainly have their trends. But I'm curious, like, what are the core sex differences between men and women?
Here's where I want to be careful, because I don't want to seem to be planting my flag and saying this is the hill I die on. If you get to know me, like really peel the layers away, on any given day I have a hard time believing in the myth of all of this. Like I'm only 1 foot in this world in many ways. I really identify more as energy than I do as a body anyway. So if you're with Dennis of Man Up Life Coaching for long enough, you'll find yourself meditating. You'll find yourself doing a lot of validation that has nothing to do with gender. And you'll find yourself saying things like, you're a good person. You're like, my validations, for instance, are, things like you're good, you're kind, you're gentle, you're patient, you're peaceful, you're humble, you're loving, you're blessed, you're healthy, you're wealthy, you're strong. Immediately somebody would say, why do those specifically have to be male validations? Couldn't those work for a woman? Of course. Sure, of course. But in my culture, people who, without getting too philosophical, identify as dudes, show up here and demonstrate that little 11-line, affirmation mantra that I just shared with you is not how they see themselves. They see themselves as the opposite of that. So my job is to take people. Again, Man Up Life Coaching is in double entendre. It's a bit of a bait and switch. I find somebody who identifies as a man. It starts out as he has a male body. He has a dick. He has, he looks like a dude without getting into the minutia of, anomalies and exceptions or whatever. The trend tends to be, I can pick a dude out of a crowd if there's a bunch of people in a room naked. So if we just say those people come here, they say, I need to man up. And they're not always straight, just so you know. They're not always straight.
Yep.
They're not always, sometimes they're poly. They're not always, monogamous. They have in common that they identify as male. They usually, 99.9% of the time, are born, to use the vernacular, assigned male at birth. Yep. And are coming here because they are working from a construct that says, I'm a dude, I want a girlfriend who eventually becomes a wife, I want to have kids, I want to settle down. I want to make money. I want to retire. I want grandkids. I may or may not be religious Jew. I may or may not be religious Muslim. I may or may not be religious Christian. Any flavors of that, I may or may not just be a spiritualist. So the answer to your question about whether I'm reinforcing it or dissembling it, once you've been here for a while, you'll learn that I'm asking guys to lean into traits that would typically be considered feminine, nurturing, intuition, improvisation, communicating with words, because the average dude uses about 300 words a day. The average female uses 700 or more a day. These are statistics. How do you define what's a chick, what's a dude? I don't know. I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah, you've got to recognize patterns.
Right. So what I'm trying to do is get guys to come through the door who are saying, I'm not masculine enough. Get them to come in here and to love themselves without having a hang-up about gender identity, getting them into a relationship with whoever their partner is or is going to be, recognizing without saying it too much where she might be leaning into her masculine, where he might be leaning into his feminine, sort of balance that out without giving it language as a precursor to making the jump to the next step, which is saying you don't have to dye your hair blue and be woke and non-binary and gender fluid to begin letting go of this idea of strict traditional binary gender roles. I'm sorry that was long-winded, but that's how I operate. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that makes a ton of sense. I love that there's a bait and switch element to this, to man up life coaching. I'd be curious. You and I talked about this last time we met. I'm a pretty linear thinker. I'd be curious how on the nose you are with that, with communicating that to your clients. And so, if you were like, Ryan, you got to take over Man Up tomorrow, I'm leaving the country and you got to fulfill this mission, without me knowing any of your methodologies, your frameworks and anything, the way that I would approach it would be, going in and talking about the utter joy and sense of connection you can feel when you throw out these, associations, these gender associations, out the window. Right. And that, I think if we really had a in-depth dialogue about, okay, if we categorize everything that made a man and a woman, both in gender expectations and then at sex, like what is there after you've shoved everything onto the gender society's definition shelves? What is left? What is the definition? Like what actually remains super different between men and women after you've taken away the behaviors that, we have developed as a result of where we're living and when we're living, right? Like to me, I want to know what is left, and that's where I would start with people, their perceptions of, you got two naked hairless monkeys that are next to each other, and what really is the difference aside from a few parts and some hormones, right? They don't know anything about society's expectations. They don't know, outside of how to like breathe, they don't know any of that. What differences do exist? And that's a genuine question I've never taken the time to think about. I've always felt it's extremely minimal.
I want to admit when we're in an area where it may be out of my expertise, because my fear is facing a Jordan Peterson who is someone who is just sitting there waiting for me with, a brain full of freaking Harvard experience to just eviscerate me on facts.
You have to do facts, Dennis. I think a good response for something like this, because I said, I don't have an answer. Is just how you feel about it. I don't think there's Yeah, I'm more so looking for your like how you feel about it as opposed to because I certainly don't know the biological facts. Did not study any of that, and I would never say I have the latest vocabulary for all of the things.
Okay, no, cool. That makes me feel a little bit better because like I'll tell you a fear that I have. Let's start there.
Yeah.
We all know that women are afraid of men. They will choose the bear. That is a social experiment that has demonstrated beyond the shadow of a doubt that women do not feel safe around men. I don't think it's as well understood how scared men are of women. Really.
Emotionally or physically?
Oh, dude, emotionally, 100%. 100%. A guy would so much rather just be punched in the stomach than be in a moment of emotional vulnerability where she is, you know, calculating when to say the thing that's just going to crush his soul. Like, you're just like your father. And which was the one thing that he told her in a moment of like emotional vulnerability. The thing that terrifies me most is being like my father. Right. So it's like men are, and again, I know I'm tap dancing around defining men or whatever, but the people in my culture are afraid of women. And it's not incel energy. They don't hate women. They want to understand women. They want to love women. They want female they want female affirmation so badly that I've created a term for this. It's big titty in the sky syndrome. It's guys who are just from the moment they pop out and crawl up like a slug up their mother's belly and latch onto that big boobie. Right there is where the tit fetish starts because it's associated with like one, survival, and two, that child does not understand that it's not still a part of this. Like we're the same organism. So that symbiosis, I was in there, I was connected. What the hell is this? Bang. Okay, there we're back. And so I get guys who are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, I'm telling you, who have this like they're running around looking for the big titty in the sky, which means they're looking for female validation. And so much of what men do to protect, perform, provide is just looking for those attaboys. So when you get a guy in a relationship, real talk, and let's not
love this vernacular. It's awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yes, welcome to our culture. So happy to share with you. So what men do is they use things like dating, porn, doom scrolling, which, it's always a whole lot of female energy on the TikToks or whatever. It's this kind of Freudian sort of like mommy thing where dudes are looking for nurturing.
Hey man, stop spinning your wheels. If you're serious about leveling up your career, your relationships, and your mindset, it's time to man up. At Man Up Life Coaching, we cut the excuses and build discipline, confidence, and purpose. Book your free strategy session now at manuplifecoaching.com/application. Don't fill it out if you're not ready to grind, but if you are, this call could change your life. Man Up Life Coaching, elite life coaching for men by men.
And they're looking for completion. They know that there's something purpose-wise, something's missing. So for men, women complete their raison d'etre. And when they're denied, they don't think skank bitch. They think they might act that way, but that's fox and the sour grapes. But what they think is I'm bad. So Andrew and I have in common that we want to save male lives. I don't know how you define men and women, but the ones who are classically defined as men are the ones who are killing themselves. The loneliness epidemic is real as hell. And if we're just ripping the Band-Aid off, Ian is a freaking absolute poster child for this phenomenon. So what we do is we, get all of these man boys, and I teach men how to love themselves, which is so cringy for a guy. Again, he'd rather just, a dude will tell himself, you suck, a lot more easily than he'll tell himself, you're a very handsome gentleman. So what are we doing here? How do I feel about all of that? The truth is, we want the people who identify as male to be a healthy counterpart for the people who identify as female. And we want them to be able to have the liberty to live their lifestyle according to their little rules of gameplay, accept other lifestyles that don't structure themselves the same way or play by the same rules. I'm very libertarian, like sort of live and let live, and that diversity is what makes life interesting. I'm concerned about homogeny because it doesn't feel natural. And so I'm comfortable with diversity. I just want to make sure that when men, dudes, guys, bros, frickin' whatever, are having conversations with themselves about their value, that they start with, I'm a good person, and that they're able to find counterparts who are similarly working on themselves and have that same self-worth, so that they can come together. And if they have kids, those kids are raised with that self-worth, and they become people who are comfortable living the lifestyle that they choose, but also very open to intelligent negotiation with other people who have different perceptions based on different perspectives. Sorry, I'm a monologuist by now, right? That's what I have to say. What are your thoughts?
I really appreciate a monologue because I struggle with like incomplete thoughts or feelings. So I really appreciate that style of communication.
Okay.
To me, what my reaction to that is the mission is so critical. There's what we have created in modern society is really isolationist. The data shows that men are way more frequently and harder hit by that, right? Unfortunately, my own experience in life has pointed me that progress to feeling connected, and I think that is really the crux of why this chronic loneliness is plaguing so many people, especially a lot of young men, especially in the United States. To tackle that is through connection. Like you said, Dennis, connection with yourself, having friends and community, and then ultimately finding the most intimate connection that you can, which is, your person, men, woman, whatever. So to me, the Oedipal component of it, I definitely think there's a lot of truth to that. Media today is all over it, and I think there's something really there. I would argue that if connection is the salve to this loneliness, connection will be achieved, and this is just my experience, connection is achieved a lot faster by focusing on similarities instead of differences, and instead of taking the time to define differences, lean into them. Um, the more walls there are, the further you're going to feel away, right? So even just like defining those walls, I think the more we can work to break down those and see that there's really not a lot different about us, right? We still haven't in this conversation figured out what is actually different aside from some parts that dangle in different places. What is actually different about men and women, right? And I think that when we're talking about how men, women being afraid of men being afraid of women, women being afraid of men physically, men being afraid of women emotionally. I think again we can, or at least the way I see it, I scrap that. What I see is fear. We both have fear. One side is experiencing a very animalistic fear. You're bigger, you're stronger, maybe a little bit more predatory, and so physically afraid, right? For the flip side of that, men who are fearing that women are going to cut them deep, I would argue that anybody can cut you deep. I'm not proud, but if I want to cut deep, I do know how, and I'm not the best at holding back. And I don't think somebody who is in a great place in their life goes to cut anybody. So if men are scared that a woman's going to cut them deep, number one, that man is probably ready to cut himself deep, and like you said, not feeling self-worth and self-love. But number two, they're with somebody who's clearly in some sort of fear. Hurt people. Nobody's having the best day of their life and going around insulting, others. So I think it all is like, to me, it just ties back to like connection is by focusing on the commonalities. And what you said, fear is the common thing. And fear for different reasons, yes. But at the end of the day, if we can understand each other's fear, understand what's hurting each other, then why would, there be a manifest of a physical outburst or an emotional cut, that kind of thing. So that's just my philosophy of it. Instead of focusing on how we're all different, focus on what we all have in common and how to take care of each other as a result of that. And that would just be, again, this is like you plot me in the Man Up life coaching CEO seat, and you're like, I'm literally going for a year. You got to take care of all my clients. That would just be my process.
I respect it. And it's interesting. We're not different in our foundational beliefs here. And I want to make it absolutely clear that that's the case. With a caveat, which is that at the end of the day, I do still have a business called Man Up Life Coaching, and you're still sitting here going, all right, so if you agree with everything I'm saying, why the fuck don't you just call it life coaching? Dennis Life Coaching. You have
your reason. You said it. If it's a little bit of a bait and switch, and you just said it really well. We're both here for the same reason. We want, my heart, I want nothing more than my brother and people like my brother to feel seen, connected, loved, to get the most that they can out of life. And we both want that same thing. Different methods, no science experiment only ever had one method. So I don't, if that's your method, I'm not gonna, I'm not here to break it down. Everybody's got their own ways of doing it.
Heard and respected. That said, I'm gonna go down the freaking Matrix rabbit hole here. Okay. I wish they hadn't co-opted the term red pill, because I would have used that, but now it's kind of got some shit on it. So let's just say, hear me, I'm going to go deep. Okay.
Yep.
I want to point out that I just heard how I said okay, and it sounded patronizing. And I realize that the reason I do that is because I'm used to working with dudes. And the moment I get philosophical to the point that we get away from Like I always joke and say, come for the abs, stay for the enlightenment. And the moment we start to move into the slippery place, I have to really kind of use my art teacher voice a little bit. So apologies for that. It's just force of habit. So here's the thing. If we smoked a bowl together right now and I told you who the fuck I really am, I'm somebody who thinks that this entire experience that we're having is sort of Alice through the looking glass. I think that it's a bizarre abstraction of reality. I think that all of the religions point to a reality which we call the ephemeral and which is really actually the firmament, as it were. I think that we are living a bastardized version of reality. We're kind of an upside down world. And that's why everything sucks. And I think that the critical component of the Matrix is the focus on the I, the identity, the ego, that which distinguishes. So on this journey, if I were on a t-shirt, I'd pull up my sleeve and you'd see that I have an Om symbol tattooed on my arm, because at the end of the day, I am of the belief, which I dare to call an understanding based on having put in the reps and having some near-death experiences and doing a lot of meditation and a bunch of other crap that I think qualifies me to speak to this stuff. I believe that if we peel the onion and we just peel it all the way down to what is the isness of is, it's vibration, it's energy, it's all energy. That's what it is. It's energy. How does energy manifest? I am of the opinion that energy manifests as a response to thought. I believe that at the independent level, the local level, the little avatars that we are that walk around this virtual reality, that our self-talk is not in fact thought. I believe that it is just noise. I believe that thoughts are things. That's why I said that I create as I speak. I really wasn't kidding. And I believe that if we look at the universe as a quantum situation, that the game is to be wavelength, not particle. But clearly, that's not what's happening here. That's not what we're perceiving. Because it's not what we're perceiving, it stands to reason that what we're experiencing is based on an error in perception. If there's an error in perception, if you recognize that perception is actually projection, and that there's this conceptual Mobius band where seeing is believing, but believing is seeing, it's kind of everything everywhere all at once, right? Which is how you break the pattern, by saying something outrageous, because then you kind of break into some, virgin territory in the everythingness of everything. I believe that the game that we're playing is a return to a state of grace in which a schizophrenic mind of God, or whatever you want to call it, becomes whole again, but with a caveat, which is that I'm going way into art guy world with this, but if you imagine an androgynous representation of consciousness, like sitting reflecting in a pool of water. If you throw pebbles into the pool of water, it's going to create interference patterns, and the interference patterns are going to create differences. And so I kind of feel like the situation that we're in now is that avatar in a fun house where every mirror shows you short, tall, skinny, fat, black, white, male, female, to infinitely varying degrees. And the game is to wake that person, that mind, that experiencer. The universe is experiencing itself. And so to wake that singularity up into the aha moment, which is what all this serpent kundalini crap is about, and what all of the I'm sick, Jesus saved me, and all of that, it's all about the same shit. And you get there through meditation. So I ask my guys, my clients, and just so you know, I do work with a couple of women, but we don't talk about it. But I just want you to know that's a thing. It's like a hidden in and out menu item. I have all of my clients practice meditation because meditation will reveal what we can't say. And when we try to say it here, what are we going to do? I'm going to end up in freaking conversations with everybody from Nick Fuentes to Andrew Tate to everybody else. And when I'm talking, I could just be meditating. So what do? We meditate. We learn that our commonality is all there is. The rest is 100% horseshit. Not in a bad way. It's just made up. And that's okay. The problem is when you selectively cherry pick what you believe is sort of an absolute and what you recognize as just metaphor. The moment you accept it as all metaphor, then fine. It's just a bunch of kids with a dress-up box, and you're just doing shit because you're in the middle of infinite time and infinite space doing infinite shit, because what the fuck else would you do in the middle of an infinite void and infinite time with infinite power? So I believe that what we're currently experiencing is a rebound where we kind of went there. It went all the way out, and now we're moving back toward a place of absolute grace, absolute awareness. And as you said, the removal of these partitions, these walls, we're literally living a cellular existence right now in every metaphorical, biological sense of the word, which is why you said isolation. Yes, we're living a cellular existence. Cell is in body, cell is in prison, cellular. What is the solution? It's not a problem you solve. It's jumping the tracks to a different way of being because this isn't working for you anymore. So what am I really, if you want to just rip the Band-Aid off, a freaking bodhisattva? What is my mission? To get everybody spiritually free. Do I believe in the gender construct temporarily because men need scaffolding and need structure? Otherwise they can't handle understanding their identity. It breaks them. And they experience existential crisis, then they go on coke binges and, it's hookers and blow, and I lose them. So that's what we're doing here. Now I'm going to loop it back to you and say that was a big one. Back to you, Ryan.
No, I loved it.
Good.
I did.
Good.
So the ego, the sense of self, I think, therefore I am. I agree with that. My wife and I were just talking. What do you think the first real sign of civilization was? We had been watching a documentary, I think on like Neanderthals or something. But I was like, what do you think the first, like, when do you think civilization we can all point to it and say that was it? To me, it was the first time somebody verbally shared a memory. Meaning we had the higher thought to actually express something that we held on to from the past. And if we're all kind of built on top of that as a base layer, I think we're all really similar. And so when we think about or at least the way that I think about it, we all were once animals, yes. And then this, moment of civilization happened. These were just very random thoughts, by the way. But moments of civilization happened, and every day we can either go back toward kind of that base instinct animal self, or you move a little further away from it. And in the Matrix style of philosophy, every choice that you make is going to inch you in one direction or the other. You're not going to, the way that I see it, and I love the Matrix, by the way, so I love that you reference it. The way that I've interpreted that over the years is every action that you take, every decision that you make, every choice that you have, are we moving back towards that animal version, which to me, let's talk about what that animal version is. It's an animal's focus on survival, right? At its purest form. That's what an animal is. And I don't blame people when they make choices that to me are in that direction, focusing on survival, right? They're clearly experiencing some sort of insecurities, food, financial, self-esteem, right? There's something that's, and it takes a lot of patience, and I'm not always the best at remembering it, but there's something that's making them go in that direction, as opposed to, like what you were saying, a more enlightened kind of utopia. We are, instead of these individual beings on this planet, we're all just this energy flowing around and together in harmony, which is obviously future state goals. But how can we use these types of platforms, and through your coaching, how can we encourage people, despite the insecurities that we're feeling, recognizing that we are, yes, we were from animals, but we are humans, so we have the higher power thought. So despite those insecurities, how can we still try and make some progress towards, towards not the animalistic side of ourselves? So I say all of that to again say, I understand that concept. I don't have direct experience with it because I'm not a guy. I've not, if I can't understand my identity, then I fall off this metaphorical cliff on the world. I would argue that probably applies to anybody, men and women. I have a lot of my identity wrapped up in work. I love what I do. I've been with the same company for going on 11 years. I know that my reality would shift if, tomorrow you said, Ryan, you don't have a job. So I would still argue that we came from the same, place. And so to get to the same, we're all marching towards the same goal. I don't want to negate what you said about men and their identity, and if they can't find it, the crisis that puts them in. My experience is the same rings true for women. And so I think what I feel like I've been feeling each time we've talked so far, Dennis, is we're actually all saying the same thing. And like you said, we want the same thing. And maybe we just don't have the counterpart perspective real time because every time you say something, oh my God, I never considered that. And I think, wait, the female equivalent of that is this, and they're really actually closely related. And so again, to me, this is very cyclical, but it's we're saying the same thing. Men and women, yes, it might look different, but they're actually going through very similar things. The product's going to be different. But how can we unify that? And how can that be done when the focus is on the definitions of the differences as opposed to the unity of the experiences, which is a very, I don't know, a very high philosophy sounding question, but yeah.
So I'm sitting here realizing, that I want to talk for another hour. And I'm like, God damn it. Did we really just do an hour already? I'm going to try to wrap up.
Yeah.
No. It doesn't mean what you think it means. Hold on. I'm going to try to respond to you knowing that I have an obligation to do that, but regretfully, because I could literally have this conversation with you for another hour and have just, okay, I want to do a level set here. Here's what I'm going to do. Number one, really, Ryan, listen. Like, that's not my dad voice. That's my just friend to friend. Really let me in on this, okay? Hear me. Audience, pay the fuck attention because I'm about to say a thing. Okay, so Ryan, you are demonstrating the exact same inquisitiveness using the same tools as the average dude who comes into Man Up Life Coaching. 100%. I am very certain that any guy listening to this is going to hear what you said in response to what I said. And if he can subtract out the which team am I on bullshit and just listen to the process, your analytical process. And you came into this saying, I'm very linear. I'm a linear thinker. Your process, I've got this book here, The Book of Life by J. Krishnamurti.
I think my wife has read that.
Okay. Krishnamurti's kind of a dick, right? But I like him because he's unapologetically a dick. Like, he's just like, look, I come from a culture where everybody proselytizes and it's about meditation and enlightenment and everything. I'm going to put my monocle in and I'm going to question everything, and I'm going to do it unapologetically. And I'm going to do it like with I just smelled cow shit look on my face for the 90 years that I'm alive. And people are going to like love me for it, which is exactly what it turned out. The more I say I don't want to write a book, the more they're going to like take my words and turn them into books. So I like about Krishnamurti that he was authentic. He was true to his own way of processing. He was very much in his masculine, freaking quote unquote. And your response to what I said reinforced for me, validated your original message. Like, why do I have to feel excluded from this because you've turned it into a boys club? Like, I feel like we're saying the same shit. So you're right, we are. The reason that I chose men, quote unquote, as my demographic is because when I was a young man looking for a mentor, I was trying to heal my father wound. And that is a very important part of your identity as a dude, is your relationship with your dad. So real talk, I'm kind of a rent-a-dad. And I am. And
That shouldn't be understated, that role that can play, by the way.
I'm saying, you know, and my practice is on a 15-year-old kid with profound autism, dwarfism, red hair and freckles, and hopefully a soul. But I mean, he is a ginger kid. So, so we love my son. We love my son. But yeah, nobody goes unscathed. I'm a Gen Xer. Fuck him too. All right. Anyway, so the deal is, I love my son. I just want to reiterate, but boy, is he tough work. So here's the part where I want you guys to listen. This is the pay the fuck attention part. Ryan, if I had chosen to call this, you know, deal with it life coaching instead of man up life coaching, and if I had chosen to make my brand assets gender neutral, there's a possibility you and I might have found each other. Maybe not, but maybe. And there's a possibility that you could have come into this culture and I would have used the same methodology with you as I use with my clients. Do you play chess?
Poorly.
On my watch, you would learn to play chess better because you would use the engineering part of your brain a little bit more. Most of my clients overuse that part of their brain. And they try to use that part of their brain to solve emotional problems. So you would play chess with the promise, what's the science? Trust me, bro. That's the science. Okay. Exercise. I would find out what your exercise, what your goals are, and I would make fitness suggestions for you based on my experience working in a gym with athletes, men and women, who trained for competition. Very actually conversational in that space. Personal organization. Because you're so linear, because you're so systematized, I do not think that personal organization would be a huge problem for you. So if I were working with you, I would more likely be suggesting for you to practice taking time off and to build breaks into your schedule rather than making your life a wall of work, which I believe you probably inherited from your dad. Just saying, this is just an outsider's view. In the spiritual department, I just learned about you that I said, let's step outside of the time-space continuum, and you looped it back to biology. Biology, chemistry are within a container, which we can call the physical realm. In that container is metaphysics. I'm not trying to, sorry, there was the tone again. I caught myself doing it. In that container is metaphysics. Where I would hope to take you would be outside of the physical, biological, chemical explanations that depend on time and space as this construct, if we're going to deconstruct, and I would take you into the metaphysical. I wouldn't take you. I would guide you to do stuff that would force you to deal with some stuff that you didn't know. And on that lateral drift, you would be like, what this is? And I would be like, hey, there we go. Let's talk about that. So if we were to work together, I think that you would learn, I don't know if you can see this. There's this little drawing that I did while you were talking. Can you see it? Mm-hmm. The choice to the left represents sort of an infinity of choices that you can make in the matrix. Do I have the chick with the red dress or not? Do I have the steak or do I not? Do I eat the cookie? Do I not eat the cookie? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What is the entire message of the matrix? The message of the matrix is that the spoon bends when you realize that it's not the spoon but you that bends. What does that mean? It means you have to change your narrative. What does that mean? It means accepting that there is no spoon, which arguably means that there is no you, that there is no objective reality, and that is enough to put you in existential crisis, right? So the antidote for that is unasking the questions that you're asking analytically, because you're trying to make a roadmap of a place that you haven't been yet, because you're trying to control it, because you're control and structure oriented. And again, that could be called your masculine brain, but call it whatever the hell you want. That's the process that's happening. Somewhere out there is a dude who's freaking ephemeral, feminine, whatever you want, magical energy is so incredibly high that the moment I started talking about that, he went, oh yeah, well, that's obvious. Yeah, she's not getting it. She's talking about like biology and stuff. And in that situation, I would be like, she's kind of the dude in this conversation. He's kind of the whatever, feminine energy in this conversation. Let's remove those constructs by saying, finally, let's remove those constructs by saying, and this is where I'm going to bring it in, the end result of Man Up Life coaching is for you to learn that arguably everything you think you know about yourself and about life is questionable, potentially impermanent. And that the reason I have chosen to be the portal that brings in people who identify with the man up language is only so that I can get them to a place that they no longer need to use that scaffolding for identity or meta understanding. Andrew, You've been so quiet. What are your thoughts about what have you seen here today? You've been a very patient fly on the wall. What do you think about everything that we've said?
It was a lot. Just
What do you mean?
I didn't think we were going to just come in here and have a casual conversation. I saw
Right.
Ryan from a mile away, dude. Trust me.
yeah, I think it was. I mean, I'm sitting here listening to the two of you talk, both highly intellectual. Obviously, I see your logical, linear, practical brain, Ryan, and I see Dennis leaning into his spiritual side and in kind of creating this, Picasso of a conversation between two people that are just genuinely curious. And I think it's a beautiful thing. So,
No, thank you, brother. Before we go, I want to explain what this was. There is a mantra that I learned pretty early on, and it was this. Peep this. Love is that, it's a 3-line mantra. Love is that which enables choice.
Both of us, Andrew and I.
Hear me on this.
Okay, I
It's
didn't
a
know if you said repeat it or not.
No. Yeah, it's the way to get into my cult
Right.
starts with you have to repeat everything I say. Come on, be an obedient woman. Men are speaking. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I was saying, hear me. Oh, I said, peep me on this. Sorry, there we go. I sometimes slip into my hood character. To soften my Napoleon Dynamite side. It's a 3-line mantra. Love is that which enables choice. Love is always stronger than fear. I always choose on the basis of love. Now, if we want to use the Matrix as our reference, my little picture was going left at the fork in the road where you have a literal infinity of choices within the Matrix. That's choice one. Choice one is to go to the left and have an infinity of choices, a seeming infinity of choices. To get lost in the labyrinth of quantum entanglement. Live cat, dead cat. Green shirt, red shirt, bald, not bald, male, woman, trans, goatee, not goatee, like glass eye, whatever. As many things as you can come up with, right? The other is love is that which enables choice. I can choose love. What the hell is love? It's the thing that you find in meditation when everything else is removed. Mm-hmm. And the best I can do is to...
Buddhist tenet.
What's that?
It's a very Buddhist tenet.
Sure it is. And another Buddhist tenet is I am that. And I think that's what we're doing here today. We're saying I am that. I am her, she is me. Yeah. The God in me and the God in you, the divine light in all of us is the same light. And so trust me when I say, fellow spiritual warrior, I'm bringing people like your brother, but not excluded to your brother, to the light and asking them to question some of their language and narratives surrounding identity, because you can't define yourself without defining the world as the context that defines you, and vice versa. So what the majority of people who are successful here in this environment learn is completely the opposite of what somebody on the outside would expect. Andrew, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Cool. All right, Ryan, before we head out, play us off stage and leave me with something powerful.
If you've shown up to Dennis's door, you're looking for change in your life. For change to be there has to be change. And so I know speaking from my own experience, it can be really hard to be open to change when you're really lonely, when you're feeling on an island, when things aren't going your way at work, outside of work, in relationships, in your relationship with yourself. So as much as we can, take steps away from that, animalistic version of ourselves. And like you were saying, like to me, there's actually not a ton of difference, Dennis, between choosing the infinite choices and going back kind of towards that survival mode, that animal mode, and then choosing love and I believe it was the sunshine on your drawing, right? Like to me, that represented happiness. It's really hard to do, but if you're on Dennis's doorstep, you want that change. So the accountability piece to me is keeping a really open mind to the fact that you might be wrong. I remember the first time my mind was changed, like very seriously changed, and it was one of the best feelings in the world. I was so taken aback by how like powerful that felt, that my mind was just started reading an article. It was actually about like self-injection sites, heroin and Philly, and I was like, how could anybody propagate, further harm to people? But then by the end of the article, you're like, and the death toll went down to 0. Yes, there's usage, but there's always going to be usage. And so anyways, my mind was totally changed by the end of the article. And if you're at Dennis's doorstep, you're looking for that change. If he's your article, keep an open mind is, I guess, the last thing that I can say. And try and walk towards that sun, that happiness, and not the infinite choices.
That's so awesome. And to be clear, it's that sun represents radiance.
Beautiful.
Speaking of language, minor language shift. We're not always happy, but if we can be comfortable in the uncomfortable, if we can lean into our self-worth, because our idea of self is grounded in our big self, which is where we experience commonality rather than difference, then we radiate a vibration that brings us all back to a state of peace, love, and sanity. Can I get an amen? Hallelujah. Andrew Bonts, play us off stage, my man.
All right. Well, if you got with us to where we're at right now, you obviously got a chance to see the philosophy side of Man Up Life Coaching. And we've talked about previous episodes about relationships and relationships with yourself and, fatherhood. And this is very much a different angle, but it's also a side of Man Up Life Coaching. So if you got value out of this, if this was helpful for you, all we ask is that you add a review on your favorite podcast player, share it if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe, share it with other people, help us spread the message, because our mission really is that brotherly love mission of showing men love, lifting men up. And because we believe that, through this mission, we can lift up, if we lift up a man, we can lift up his family. If we can lift up that family, we can lift up that community and kind of have that ripple effect beyond that. So we appreciate all of you for being here. We appreciate you, Ryan, for, investing the time today and sharing your perspective. I think it was beautiful. And you brought out a side of Dennis that I don't know if our audience has seen before. So it was pretty cool to see.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I really, really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you.